Imagine for a second that you live in a city that decides it needs a bit of a facelift.
Right. They want to plant these beautiful sprawling trees in your neighborhood.
Exactly. You're expecting this lush green canopy over the streets, like a totally picturesque urban oasis.
But instead, they accidentally import a bizarre, real-world sci-fi horror movie directly into your backyard.
Yeah, which is honestly terrifying. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a situation unfolding right now in Odense, Denmark.
And our sources for this one are just a truly wild mix of urban ecology, government bureaucracy, and some unbelievable grassroots innovation.
Like, truly unbelievable. The mission for our deep dive today is to explore how a dangerous invasive species took a major city hostage.
Right? And the incredibly frustrating red tape that's preventing its eradication.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we also have to talk about how two 11-year-old boys are trying to save the day using, I kid you not, AI lasers, drone foam sprays, and hungry chickens.
Which is easily the best part of the whole story. But, to appreciate the solution, we really have to understand the villain first.
Yeah. Locally in Denmark, they call it the larva from hell.
A very fitting name.
Yeah.
Scientifically, it's the Oak Processionary Moth, or Thaumetopoea processionea.
And, you might think a caterpillar sounds totally harmless, but the sources make it explicitly clear that this is a severe public health hazard for you and your community.
Yeah, it is a massive hazard, specifically on a microscopic level. The danger doesn't actually come from a bite or a sting.
Oh, yeah, it's the hairs.
Exactly.
Mm.
As these larvae mature, they develop tens of thousands of tiny microscopic hairs called setae.
And these aren't just normal bristles. They are essentially tiny aerodynamic harpoons.
Loaded with a highly irritating protein called Thaumetopoein.
Wow. And because they're so light, they detach super easily, right? Like they just float on the wind.
Yeah, they just drift.
Yeah.
If you walk through a park or, cycle past an infected tree, these hairs lodge into your skin.
Or your eyes. Or your respiratory tract. It's just a nightmare.
It triggers severe allergic reactions. We're talking painful rashes, respiratory distress, general illness.
Not just for you, but for your pets, too. You literally can't walk your dog under these trees.
No, and you can't let your kids play near them either. It effectively makes these brand new green spaces toxic dead zones.
Which is just so sad. And the biology of how they actually consume these spaces is just as aggressive as their defense mechanism.
Oh, absolutely. Their entire life cycle is an exercise in phenological synchrony.
Which is a fancy way of saying their biological clock is perfectly timed to their environment.
Right. They hatch in the early spring, typically April or May, and that hatching aligns exactly with what botanists call bud burst in oak trees.
Ah, so when the oak trees put out their very first tender shoots?
Exactly. The highly nutritious shoots. The larvae emerge to gorge on them. They are absolute obligate specialists. They need oak to thrive.
But I mean, if they are so specialized, you'd think they would just starve if they ate all the oak leaves in the area, right?
You would think so, yeah. But the sources highlight this deeply creepy adaptation they have.
Oh, the marching.
Yes. If a massive infestation defoliates an entire tree, they don't just die. They transition to this desperate survival mode.
They form these massive nose-to-tail lines, literally marching in long processions.
Which is where they get their name. They form a biological train and just march over to hornbeams, beech, or birch trees.
Just consuming those purely to stay alive until they can pupate.
It's an incredibly resilient survival strategy. And, the adult phase is equally specialized, though in the opposite direction.
Right, because once they transform into moths in the height of summer, they go through a complete biological shift.
Yeah, the adult moths actually have vestigial mouth parts.
Yeah.
They cannot eat.
Wait, really? They don't eat at all?
Not a single calorie. Their sole biological imperative is to fly, mate, lay overwintering egg masses high up in the oak canopy, and then just die.
So it's essentially a biological machine designed only to consume oak and reproduce.
That's all it does.
Which brings up the obvious question for anyone listening. If these things are so devastating, how did they end up taking over Odense in the first place?
Right, because we aren't talking about a few bugs just blowing over the border on a breezy day.
No. The experts in our sources point directly to the mechanics of modern landscaping.
Odense, like so many cities, wanted rapid urban greening. They wanted beautiful avenues immediately.
And to get that, you don't plant tiny acorns and wait 50 years?
Exactly. You import large, half-grown oak trees from commercial nurseries abroad. Likely from Holland in this case.
And they planted them directly in southeastern Odense neighborhoods, places like Tornberger, Lindved, and Kohave.
Yeah. So it's not just a biological Trojan horse.
I love that analogy. We imported beautiful trees to make the city look nice, but accidentally smuggled in toxic invaders hidden right in the bark.
Exactly. It was basically a temperature-triggered time bomb. The trees were imported with the eggs already secured to the upper branches.
We bought the explosives, and the warm Danish spring was the detonator.
And once planted in Odense, the larvae had the absolute ideal conditions to hatch.
With no natural predators around to stop them.
None at all. And the scale of the fallout is immense. The sources document over 1,000 trees currently infected in that southeastern area.
1,000 infected, highly toxic trees in residential neighborhoods. That is wild.
This raises an important question about how cities balance the desire for rapid urban greening with the risk of importing invasive biohazards.
Right, because researchers from Copenhagen University are actively demanding a strict plant passport system now.
Yeah, their argument is that relying on visual inspections of small agricultural goods just isn't enough anymore.
We need a rigorous border inspection system specifically for large landscaping trees.
Exactly. So inspectors can actually check these imported trees at the border before they end up next to a playground.
Which just feels like common sense. So Odense is dealing with this biological nightmare. And I mean, you would assume the municipal response would involve a swift, modern eradication effort.
You would hope so, since people are actively getting sick.
But the methods the municipality is currently using. Honestly, I genuinely thought I was reading a historical document.
It's baffling.
They are sending workers up in cherry pickers to manually vacuum the nests.
Or they are literally using gas burners to set the nests on fire out of the trees.
Blowtorches. They are fighting caterpillars with blowtorches.
It is a shockingly primitive approach for a modern European city. The manual labor involved is incredibly slow.
And dangerous for the workers.
And ultimately just ineffective at scale. But the frustration radiating from the local residents in these sources stems from the fact that a highly effective, modern alternative already exists.
Yes. Let's talk about the biological toxin, Bacillus thuringiensis, or Belady.
Right, and let's explain what that actually is, because the word toxin usually sets off alarm bells for people.
Totally. But Belady is completely organic. It's a naturally occurring soil bacterium.
It is so safe that it's approved for organic farming.
Yeah, you could spray it on a field of cabbage, harvest it, and safely eat it. It doesn't harm humans, birds, or mammals.
And the mechanism behind Bt is incredibly elegant. It doesn't work like a chemical poison that just kills on contact.
It produces specific crystal proteins, right?
Exactly. And for these proteins to become toxic, they have to be ingested by a very specific type of insect.
Specifically, the larvae of butterflies and moths.
Right. And the reason it's harmless to us, or to a bird, comes down to stomach chemistry.
Okay, so is it about the acidity? Like human stomachs are super acidic?
Actually, it's the exact opposite. Human stomachs are highly acidic, yes, which destroys the crystal safely.
Oh, gotcha.
But a caterpillar's gut is highly alkaline. When the caterpillar eats a leaf sprayed with Bt, that alkaline environment dissolves the crystal.
Releasing a toxin that binds to the gut wall.
Right, and it literally punches microscopic pores through the membrane. The caterpillar stops eating immediately and dies of starvation or sepsis.
It is a highly targeted biological key that only fits a specific lock.
Which makes it incredibly safe for the broader ecosystem.
Okay, so if we have this safe, organic, highly targeted biological tool, the obvious solution is to load it into an agricultural drone, fly it over the canopy, and neutralize the threat.
Right, you would think. Save the trees, stop the allergic reactions.
Yeah.
But the sources outline 3 major bureaucratic hurdles preventing that exact solution.
And the first one is the airborne spraying laws, right?
Yeah. In Denmark and across the EU generally, spraying any substance from the air in a dense urban area is strictly banned.
Even from a drone.
The law treats drone spraying the exact same as a massive crop duster airplane. The primary fear is wind drift.
Like the liquid mist blowing into a private garden or hitting a pedestrian.
Exactly, the chaotic fluid dynamics of it.
But, I mean, if wind drift is the primary legal block, couldn't they just fly the drones super close to the canopy? Or is there an ecological reason they can't just blanket spray an oak tree?
Well, that leads to the second hurdle, which is collateral damage.
Ah, right.
Because Belady is targeted to the alkaline gut of caterpillars, but it is broad spectrum within that specific category.
So it doesn't discriminate between the toxic Oak Processionary moth and, say, a harmless native Danish butterfly.
Exactly. Harmless or even endangered native butterfly larvae might be sharing that same oak tree. Blanket spraying the canopy would cause localized ecological damage.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense. You don't want to wipe out the native pollinators just to get the invasive moth. What's the third wall?
The timing. The window of efficacy is incredibly narrow.
Right. Bloki only works efficiently in the early spring for just a few weeks when the larvae first hatch and are eating the most.
And if bureaucratic delays push the response past that window, the larvae grow. They develop those toxic fire hairs, and spraying them is completely pointless.
Because the hazard is already airborne. Look, I have to challenge the government's rationale here based on the sources.
Go for it.
The hypocrisy is just staggering. Wait, the authorities are claiming they have a mandate to protect the environment, right?
That's their stance, yes.
They say they have to total protect the area from organic sprays because of a hypothetical wind drift regulation and to save a few native caterpillars.
Right.
But they are actively taking blowtorches and setting the trees on fire. How on earth does burning a tree protect the native butterflies sharing those branches?
It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. And the documents pull absolutely no punches when dissecting this political failure.
Because it's just absurd.
The regulatory framework is forcing officials into a total paradox. They are prioritizing the theoretical protection of a micro-ecosystem over the acute, documented health crisis of the citizens.
Yeah, and if the alternative action is fire, the total protection argument just collapses entirely.
Furthermore, the timeline removes any excuse of this being an unforeseen acute emergency.
Oh, because it's been going on for over a year now.
Exactly. The officials can no longer call it a surprise. And the most damning detail in the reporting is that the environmental minister actually has a specific legal tool for this exact paradox.
The minor use dispensation.
Yes. It's an emergency authorization. The environmental agency has the legal power to grant temporary, highly targeted permission to bypass standard airborne spraying rules.
If it addresses a serious, localized threat to public health.
Which this obviously is. The legal pathway exists.
But they haven't touched it. The minister has just sat on their hands, trapped in a maze of their own bureaucracy, while citizens are literally getting sick trying to walk down the street.
The consensus across the critique is crystal clear. The biochemical tools exist, the legal tools exist, but the bureaucratic agility to deploy them does not.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting, because when centralized authority paralyzes itself, localized ingenuity takes over.
And this is where we introduce the unlikely heroes.
Yes. Kesser and Steen. When you hear about a high-tech strike force stepping up where the government failed, you probably picture a corporate engineering firm.
Or a Silicon Valley startup.
Right. But Kesser and Steen are 11 years old.
It's just brilliant. These two 11-year-old boys are operating a specialized chemical lab out of their backyard.
And the technology breakdown of what they built is wild. Looking at the source images, they operate a venture they literally call Kesser and Steen drone service.
And they aren't just flying off-the-shelf camera drones around for fun.
No, they've equipped their drones with an AI assist targeting system.
The drone flies up into the canopy, and it uses artificial intelligence combined with a laser to perfectly identify and pinpoint the larvae on the tree trunks.
Which completely neutralizes the government's collateral damage argument.
Exactly. By using computer vision to isolate the specific silken nests of the invasive moth, the AI ensures the system only targets the threat.
Leaving the endangered native butterflies totally untouched, it's surgical.
But the delivery mechanism is where they truly outsmarted the airborne spraying laws.
Oh yeah, the foam. Once that AI laser locks onto the nest, the drone doesn't spray a clumsy, widespread liquid mist.
It deploys a specialized organic Bt foam directly onto the target.
And that solves the wind drift hurdle completely.
Because of the viscosity. The core physical problem with aerial spraying is aerosolization, tiny droplets getting caught in the wind.
But the foam is heavy. It overcomes the fluid dynamics of the wind, shoots in a straight line, and clings strictly to the bark where the larvae are eating.
It eliminates the drift entirely. But, they didn't even stop at an aerial assault.
No, their overarching system, which they impressively named the biologisk akempelsis.
The biological control system.
Right. It has a ground component that acts as a failsafe. It's not just high-tech in the air, it's old school on the ground.
This is where they bring in the chickens.
Yes. They drive a minivan carrying a specialized larva and hen unit, literally live chicks and roosters.
They deploy them at the base of the infected oak trees. While the drones are neutralizing the canopy with AI and foam, the chickens are naturally foraging on the ground.
Eating any annoying larvae that manage to drop out of the tree. It is a fully closed-loop eradication system.
It really is. The technology addresses the inaccessible canopy, and traditional agriculture handles the fallout.
It's genius.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, there is a massive legal double standard at play here regarding intellectual property.
Right, because if these kids have cracked the code to safely applying this toxin via AI and drones, they completely own that IP.
Absolutely. The government shouldn't just appropriate a kid's invention because the adults were too tangled in red tape to figure it out themselves.
Seriously.
And the broader context is even more frustrating when you look at how blighty is regulated globally.
Oh, like in the US and Germany?
Right. In the US, Germany, and Sweden, the regulation of this organic bacterium is incredibly relaxed. Any private citizen can walk into a hardware store and buy blighty off the shelf.
Usually branded as mosquito dunks, right? You just drop a tablet in your garden pond, it safely kills mosquito larvae, and you're done.
It's treated like standard gardening equipment. But in Denmark, private use is strictly banned.
Wow.
The law mandates that blighty is only allowed for licensed professionals, and even then, only in tightly closed greenhouses for fighting fungus gnats.
So Kesser and Steen aren't just fighting a toxic invasive species. They're actively having to out-innovate a rigid national law.
A law that regulates a cabbage-safe organic compound as if it were a dangerous synthetic chemical weapon.
It really forces you to step back and look at the sheer absurdity of the whole picture.
It does.
We are looking at a modern city brought to its knees by an imported caterpillar. A government administration so paralyzed by contradictory environmental rules that their default solution is blowtorches.
And cutting through all of that noise, two 11-year-old boys managed to integrate AI computer vision, drone fluid dynamics, and a flock of hungry chickens to engineer a scalable solution. It serves as a profound case study for all of us. This deep dive highlights how vulnerable our local ecosystems are to global trade.
Yeah, we often treat city parks like static art installations, but they are highly vulnerable biological networks.
Furthermore, it shows how bureaucratic protection can sometimes cause more harm than good. Systems designed to minimize risk can become too rigid to adapt.
They inadvertently maximize the harm by blocking the very innovations needed to solve the crisis.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a fascinating prospect to consider.
What's that?
Well, for decades, the power to manage large-scale environmental issues belonged exclusively to centralized governments or massive corporations.
Right.
But if two 11-year-olds in a backyard can seamlessly combine artificial intelligence, aerial robotics, and traditional agriculture to solve a toxic public health crisis,
It's incredible.
what other massive systemic environmental problems are we failing to solve simply because we were waiting for official permission to innovate?
That is a question worth carrying with you. The power dynamic is shifting, and it might just start with a drone and a chicken. Think about that next time you look at a perfectly landscaped park. Until next time, keep diving deep. Imagine for a second that you live in a city that decides it needs a bit of a facelift.